Hello friends, I am participating in another challenge that is hosted by Ingrid from Mommy and Mia Homeschool Chronicles, and this challenge is the $5 meal challenge. Ingrid has challenged us to spend only $5 and to prepare a meal for your family, for the entire family to eat with a budget of only $5. Not included in that budget are things that you would find in your pantry or your refrigerator, like eggs and milk and butter and flour and baking powder and spices and things like that. So those don't count. Anything else that you're using in the meal needs to be $5 or below. This is a tough challenge, but I was able to do it. And I am feeding a family of 4. Basically, they are all adults. My son is 20, my daughter will be 18 in May, and then there's my husband and I. So let me show you what I came up with a $5 budget. Excuse the noise in the background, that's just my ice machine going. I don't want to stop it because I need ice. Anyway, for the protein for my meal, I am going to be using some of our home-raised poultry. We do poultry every year. We raise chickens and then we butcher them. And I keep track in this little booklet the cost of the chicken, because I'm always curious to know if we are coming ahead in our budget by doing our own chicken and raising our own chicken. And so we definitely are. What I do, this was for last year obviously because we haven't done chickens for 2018 yet. I write down everything about the chickens and how to take care of them so that I don't forget from year to year. And then I take and write down my expenses. And this is for the chicks. Like the chicks cost $116.50. We ordered 50 chicks. All of the feed, all of the bedding, everything for the entire time that we raise them. We usually get the chicks in the end of August and then we butcher them in October. So for the total expenses to raise 50 chicks clear to butchering size was almost $400. And then I also kept track on a different sheet of paper. As we butchered the chickens, we would weigh them and I would write down their weight, and then I did all the math, and we ended up getting 347 pounds of chicken out of 50 chickens, and so it came to $1.15 a pound. Now the chicken that I'm using for today's meal, I actually cooked it yesterday, and I will insert a picture here of what it looked like when I pulled it out of the freezer. And as you can see on the packaging, the chicken weighed 7 pounds 1 ounce. So I just rounded it to 7 pounds just to make the math easier. I calculated that we ate about half of the chicken yesterday for a meal, and so that left the other half for today's meal. If you take 3.5 pounds of chicken and you multiply it by $1.15, it comes up to $4.45. So I am figuring that my chicken that I'm using in today's meal cost $3.45. So what I'm making for dinner tonight is chicken and dumplings, and what I'll do is I'll just take the chicken meat off the bones. I will use whatever broth is in the pot from when we cooked it yesterday, and I will add some chicken broth. I'm not sure if I'm going to need both cans, but the chicken broth is 49 cents a can. If I end up just using one can, that will bring my total so far to $3.94. If I use both cans, it will be $4.43. At the end, I will let you know, well, you'll see me making it, so you'll know how many cans I end up using, and I will definitely post my total at the end. Now, all of my ingredients for the dumplings are part of my pantry, so I don't have to count any of those. I will be showing you how I make my dumplings. And then for our vegetable, I'm going to be making black-eyed peas, We raised these in the garden, and my family absolutely loves them, and I'll show you how I cook black-eyed peas. And I'm going to go ahead and just make 2 packages because, like I said, everybody in my family absolutely loves them, and whatever is left over we'll warm up and eat with tomorrow's dinner. So I'm not going to count this. I'm going to count this as free because we raised it, and it was just basically the cost of the seeds, which was pennies. So I guess if you want to count this cost of the seed, I mean, I can't even really tell you because we didn't put any added fertilizer on the garden. We grow things organically, and so it was just the cost of the seeds. And one plant can produce probably enough peas for both of these bags. So the cost of one seed, less than a penny. So let me get started, and I will show you how to make my chicken and dumplings. Okay, so here is the chicken from yesterday. I cooked it in this crock pot, and when we have lots of leftover food, I just leave it in the crock pot and put it in the fridge that way. And as you can see, there's quite a lot of chicken in here, but there's also a lot of grease, and so I want to get that grease off of there. So I'm gonna pick out the big pieces of meat that are sitting right on top, and those I will shred up to put into the dumplings. Now there may be enough meat here that I won't even use it all for this meal, so we'll just kind of see. I'm just going to take a knife and gently pry this fat off of here and put it over on a paper plate, and we'll just throw it in the trash. And then once I get the bulk of this fat off of here, I'm going to transfer this carcass into a pot on the stove, and I'm just going to heat it just enough for the broth to melt, and for the chicken carcass to be a little bit warmer. I don't want it hot because I'm going to debone it, and it's really hard to debone chicken when it's scalding hot, but it's really hard to debone it when it's ice cold out of the refrigerator too. So I'm just going to get the rest of this fat off of here, and then I'm going to transfer it into a pot on the stove and just warm it. See, it's easier to defat your broth when it's cold than it is when it's in a liquid form. I do have a degreasing pitcher thing that separates the grease, a grease separator, but I like to do it this way most of the time. Less dishes to clean up, and it's just easier. And what little bit of fat is still in there is not a problem. I'm not worried about that. So I'm going to go ahead and get this transferred into a pot on the stove, get it warmed up, and then I will bring you back and debone the chicken for you, and I will do that in fast speed. Alright, for the black-eyed peas, we like to cook them quite a while on top of the stove. This is not one of those vegetables where you can really do it justice if you cook it in the microwave. So I get my medium-sized pot here, and these are still partially frozen. I'm just going to dump them in this pan. And then to this pot, I'm going to add some dehydrated onion. I'm not going to salt it because we all like different amounts of salt on our food, and so they can, everybody can salt their own at the table. I throw in a couple of bay leaves, a couple of cloves of garlic, and I use this crushed garlic that you get out of the freezer section at Walmart. And then some water. I've got 4 cups here. I don't know if I'll use all of it. I just pour it in till the peas are just barely covered, and it didn't take quite 4 cups. And then I just go ahead and stick this on the stove and put it on a medium heat until it comes to a boil, and then I lower the temperature down and let it simmer while the rest of our food is cooking. I got that chicken deboned, and out of that 7-pound chicken, I've gotten 2 meals, and this is the only waste. This is bones and fat and skin. This is just a cereal bowl, and so we really don't waste much when we use our homegrown chicken. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pour this broth back in here. This is what was in that crock pot. I'm going to add another can of chicken broth, and then I'm going to bring this up to a boil. And while that is happening, I'm going to get the dumpling mixture ready to go. For the dumplings, this is my mother's recipe, and it's very, very simple. It's kind of like a really loose biscuit dough, and it only requires 5 ingredients. When you need all-purpose flour, and you'll need 3 cups. So there's 3 cups of flour. You will need 1.5 teaspoons of salt. 1.5. 4 teaspoons of baking powder, and I always use the aluminum free. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you will need 6 tablespoons of shortening, and I always use organic shortening. Alright, so there's 6 tablespoons of shortening, and then you're going to want to take a fork or a pastry blender if you have one of those, and then just kind of stir this in till the dough resembles coarse cornmeal. So that's what it should look like when you have it mixed well. Now the only other ingredient that you add is milk, and as you may or may not know, I have to do things dairy free, so I'm going to be using cashew milk, and you will need 1.5 cups. Now I'm not going to add the liquid to this until the broth on the stove is boiling, because once you get this dough going, you don't have to work like super fast, but you can't leave this dough sitting on the counter for 20 minutes while you're waiting for something to come to a boil. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the camera, and I'll bring you back when I'm ready to add the liquid to this dumpling mixture. Alright, so the broth is starting to simmer, so I'm going to go ahead and mix the wet ingredients into the dry ingredients, and I'm just going to use a spoon. Now sometimes it takes a little more liquid than 1.5 cups. It just depends. And it doesn't really matter if they're a little bit soupy. You'd rather it be a little soupy than too dry. And yeah, it's going to need a little bit more, so I'm going to go ahead and just dump the rest of the carton of cashew milk in there. I use organic flour, and I swear it takes more liquid than recipes call for. And I don't know if it's because it's organic flour or what it is, but just about every recipe I use the organic flour in, I end up adding more liquid than the recipe calls for. But this is what your dough should look like. It's a really sticky, loose biscuit type dough. So I'm going to move the camera over to the stove, and I will show you what we do next. You can see the black-eyed peas are just bubbling away, and that's what you want them to do. You want them to just cook slowly on a slow simmer. And then we have the chicken and the broth over here in this cast iron Dutch oven, and yeah, it's boiling away, so we're ready to add the dumplings. So while this mixture is just bubbling away like crazy, you just take your dumpling dough and you just plop it right in, trying not to make a mess like I just did. I'm a messy cook. You don't have to make them the same size. You don't have to be careful about that at all. They puff up and they kind of meld almost into one dumpling, but not quite. I mean, you can distinguish the different dumplings, but it's not like you're trying to make a picture perfect biscuit or anything like that. Alright, so now once all of your dumpling dough is in the pot, you want to set your timer for 10 minutes. You want to cook it for 10 minutes uncovered, then put the lid on and cook for another 10 minutes. When this is all ready and ready to dish up, I'll bring you back and I will show you my finished plate. And as an added note, I did only end up putting 1 can of chicken broth in the mixture. So here it is when it's done. I turned the heat off, but it is still bubbling because these cast iron pans do hold the heat. My family is not home yet. Scott took the kids out driving so they can get those hours in so they can get their driver's licenses. So when they get back, I will dish this up and I will show you what it looks like. I'm just going to put the lid back on it, and this cast iron will keep it nice and warm. The black-eyed peas are pretty much done. That's what they look like when they're done to the point where we like them to be. They're not quite so bright green anymore. I'm just going to go ahead and shut the heat off under these and leave the lid on them, and those should stay nice and hot as well. I would like to take this opportunity right now to thank Ingrid from Mommy and Mia Homeschool Chronicles for hosting this challenge. It was really fun, and it did stretch me a bit to try to figure out how to prepare a meal for less than $5. I hope you enjoyed this video of how I prepared a meal for less than $5 for my family. Now, I don't know if it's considered cheating or not that I used homegrown vegetables and my homegrown chicken, but that is definitely a way that you can save money on your budget by having a garden, and if you can, raising your own meat. Thanks a lot for watching, friends, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.